Disclaimer. Absolutely no one in this video, other than the author of this presentation, has currently identified specifically with the term life artist or life art as described here in this video as of 2023. Included are simply some of the ideas, lives, and work that the author of the video has been inspired by and utilized as nodes of meaning in the development of the thoughts expressed here within. Inclusion of these artists and other people are not necessarily an endorsement of the individuals, but are rather first and foremost mentioned as canonical figures or candidates for canonical figures in the infrastructure of the historical narrative of Western art. As the life art movement unfolds, more folks may associate with the terms life artist and life art once they have been integrated into the historical lexicon of both Western fine art and the English language, while simultaneously transcending that narrative and entering a truly global and world perspective that is inclusive of all people, all places, and all times, thus setting the stage for a new era of art and art making. The author has respected people involved by using as much as possible materials that were clearly stated to be in the public domain or Creative Commons as references. This video is for educational purposes. Thank you. Art as Life and Its Influences, a proposition for life art, presented by Jon Keppel. This message is to make clear what I feel is a significant development in the historical narrative of Western art that both moves the needle of artistic practice forward for the next century and beyond, while also transcending the art world as we know it. The practice of which I speak is namely living life as art, which for all intents and purposes can be recognized in a way by the term life art. Certainly this explication is ancient and really timeless, and has been something that has been in play since the beginning, as in the Big Bang, and perhaps the fundamental quality of consciousness itself. The point I want to emphasize in this brief description of the possibilities at hand is that there is a movement emerging globally that is not yet codified fully or comprehensively organized in conjunction with a species-wide consciousness raising in the spheres of art, spirituality, and science that is addressing this dynamic in pertinent and meaningful ways as a response to the anxiety of our times and also the potential in our development as a species. The exploration and communication of this theme is a testimonial to what I feel is the truest power of art in our lives, the power of becoming. This exposition is not only philosophy of art, but art practice itself, and is at its most basic level simply an awareness of what I feel is the reach and potential of art in our lives. The following is the historical thread of influence by which I have come to this understanding and by which I have come to explore a transition in art from the consideration of objects as art to concepts as art, to now people, lives, and life itself as art. From time immemorial, we had paintings and sculptures as indicators of art in the world. This began roughly with ancient cave paintings and went all the way through for hundreds upon hundreds of years through countless movements in art. This includes instances such as pre- and early history from 40,000 to 500 BCE, which also included Egyptian art. The art of antiquity from about 900 BCE to 300 BCE, which expanded into smatterings of Greek, Etruscan, and Roman works. Late antiquity and the Middle Ages from 300 to 1450 CE. The Renaissance from 1450 to 1610. Further development with styles and schools throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, mostly in paintings and sculptures that eventually found a pivot at the beginning of last century, the 20th century, when a turn in the focus of art changed from art as object to art as concept. This happened when the French artist Marcel Duchamp changed the locus of art from a material display of taste to one of conceptual elucidation. He did this by entering a commonplace pre-manufactured urinal into an exhibition, which ultimately got rejected from that exhibition, as art, thereby challenging the entire conception of what constitutes art. It was his choice as an artist, in jest as it may have been, to identify a commonplace pre-manufactured object as art, something that became known as a ready-made. that opened up an entirely new vista of what art could be by what I feel was ultimately identifying or revealing an artistic quality that was essentially already inherent in all material reality. Through my research, a thread can be followed from this point of transition towards conceptualization through the past century to the current day, illuminating the notions of choice and concept, and in some instances chance, as the key ingredients for artistic practice as represented in the Western historical art narrative. This thread goes through the 20th century, starting with Marcel Duchamp, and then next to American composer and theorist Jon Cage's conception that all sound can be music depending on how you think about it. One of his most notable pieces is something called 4:33, or 4 minutes and 33 seconds. In this piece, the performer is instructed to simply sit at a piano and not play anything for that amount of time, allowing for the ambient noise and sounds of the auditorium, such as creaking of chairs, coughs, or comments, to make up the sound of the composition and be the performance itself. Andy Warhol's perceptual interchangeability of art and reality with the Brillo Boxes is another example of the blurring of lines between art and reality. Essentially, these Brillo boxes were painted and assembled to appear exactly like so-called regular Brillo boxes. This piece was explored at length by the man who coined the term art world. That man was philosopher and critic Arthur Danto. Danto believed that Andy Warhol's piece with the Brillo boxes marked the end of a history of art that tracked humanity's attempt to represent the world. Danto believed that since there was no discernible difference between Andy Warhol's boxes and their commercial counterpart, that this meant that the story of art, as it was getting told up until then, had come to an end. This is a potent element for what makes the way for life as art, I feel. In my estimation, this was not only showing how art could be like reality, but that reality could be like art. Another iteration of the blurring of art and reality came along with Allan Kaprow's Art Life Happenings, all arising mid-century. The works from this time period began to take place at locations like pools and hotels rather than in a gallery setting. These happenings helped to loosen the categories of art and fell somewhere between the notions of performance and installation, event, actions, and activities. Then in the 1960s, movements like Fluxus began creating a global network of artists working in the life art realms. To make the point of life art most clear, works such as when Fluxus artists would simply be cutting each other's hair on stage as art are clear indications of everyday lived actions becoming art. Tehching Hsieh, a Taiwanese artist, also produced work in the 1980s that exhibited the rising of life as art in the art sense. Pictured here, he is known for his work titled 1 Year Performance, 1980 to 1981, time clock piece. That had him punching a time card every hour for that year's time, documented through photos taken at each punch. This was essentially treating his own existence as art. The thread continues through to around the turn of the 21st century when I feel art as concept began to change over to art as person. This happened with a movement that has come to be known as relational aesthetics, made most clear by curator and critic Nicolas Bourriaud and his book Relational Aesthetics. Bourriaud brought attention to a movement in the work of artists by codifying an understanding of works that basically focused on human relations. This is represented with works like Rirkrit Tiravanija's Pad Thai, Untitled Free, and Untitled Free Still, which appeared throughout the 1990s and 2000s that had the artist cooking and handing out food while attendees ate that food in a gallery. It is this work that I feel can be used to demarcate a shift of life merging with art as a lived action of sustenance, in that the piece consisted of the preparing and eating of a meal as art. Also, I believe there is an important sense of kindness in this gesture that exemplifies the type of conscientious way of relating to others that we strive for in everyday life. Also, the performative work, a short while later, by Marina Abramovic in 2010, named The Artist is Present, is something which I believe had being itself as the artwork, or more precisely, human being as the artwork. In this piece, Marina simply sat in a chair and would look into, gaze into, stare into, commune wordlessly into the eyes of many people as art. This work also brought this development of art beyond sustenance and into existential reality, or rather beneath, beyond, or further within that which is sustained through nutrition. It is just around here when I feel deeds and actual real life became possible as art, and that the possibility of personhood as art arrived historically in the Western narrative timeline. In becoming about personhood, it makes an art of all people, of humanity itself, and all the world in which we live by merging completely with the sustenance of corporeal reality, existential reality, and just simply put, creation itself. This sentiment, I believe, begins to find a whole new era of art and art making being possible, where the market will be emphasizing experiences guided by artists or simply lived by life artists themselves, whether formally or informally, rather than simply being an exchange of objects. This is why I feel that personhood is the artwork of our times, and that character building and practices like mindfulness are instantiations of artistic practice now. This also harkens back to how people from throughout history who were teachers were also artists of life. People like Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu, whose lives were the work. But what's even more is that every single being who has ever lived, whether human or otherwise, has been an instantiation of being itself, of what I am referring to here as life art. It is not about making works of art per se. It is about living as art, where conventional works of art are byproducts of the personal development done on an individual basis and in the collective. It is the dawn of art as person in my estimation, after previously being primarily about objecthood and more recently conceptualization. Art as person opens up an opportunity to develop as people where we ourselves are the art we seek and can transform ourselves to help make this life and place a wonderful world in which to grow. Granted, though, and it is very important to reiterate, this does not mean that practices with objects and concepts goes away, but rather is enhanced by this understanding as scaffolding for our ultimate individual and collective growth. People have been starting to emerge, as far as my own research has brought me, that are contributing to this awareness raising and transformation of art in our lives. People like Laura Hollick, who in a 2014 TEDx talk proclaimed that she was art, and that her life is art. Laura has gone on to create a community called the Soul Art Community, where she charges for trainings and experiences. Flora Bowley, who is an artist, teacher, and permission giver, is also doing this for several years and is creating something like Free Flow, which is an online paid community organized through Mighty Networks, where she, as the artist, leads a group in discovering and furthering their own creativity. Both of these people also paint in the conventional sense of the term as I use it, but also highlight this sense that the painting is a process or practice that is what it is all about, just as much as an end product. Author Elizabeth Gilbert, known for her smash hit book titled Eat, Pray, Love, also talks about this connection, which she describes as creative living, and really puts an emphasis on art making being about love and joy and good feelings, rather than suffering for the work and being unhappy, as was a certain type of way that many artists used to go in life. She describes this most prominently in her book Big Magic. There are many other people with themes like these that I have found particularly online. One of those people is named Whitney Freya, who has an online training named the Life Artist Masterclass, among many other trainings, while also hosting Facebook groups that delve into using painting as a process for more creative living, healing, and spiritual attuning. There are many other people, young and old, doing similar things, particularly online. This all, I feel, is coming out of the self-help movement that started as far back as the 1930s with Alcoholics Anonymous, right here in Akron, Ohio, which is where I was born, where I am based out of, and where I have been facilitating a lot of the thoughts for life art and the life art movement. Later, starting in the 1970s, Dr. Wayne Dyer led the self-help movement through writing books and giving talks. Also in the 1970s, Jon Kabat-Zinn spearheaded the mindfulness movement, which has been manifesting into the mainstream ever since, including during the present time as of the making of this presentation in the summer of 2023. What I describe here as life art is ancient wisdom mixing with the trial and tribulations of our current day and age to create a perfect storm and life art movement that is way out beyond, extraordinarily out beyond anything that could be simply known as an ism or fad, and is something that I believe indicates a grand shift in the nature of art for the coming time. Again, this does not mean that objects and concepts will become outdated, but just that this sense of living life as art can stand as the foundation and through line for much of what begins to happen as things go forward, not only in the art world, but in world art, in life itself. This is something I explore in my own work, where I'm looking at the idea that one can channel the muse, so to speak, not only into paintings and sculptures, but into one's very self, making an art of life itself, making oneself art and a creative endeavor. This means taking on daily, everyday activities like grocery shopping, cleaning up around the house, and cooking with more vim and vigor as an action of art. Also, errands like searching for new clothes or bigger choices like choosing a job and so on become a part of expressing this life art essence. It literally includes everything for me. The shift that has happened in my life and understanding is encapsulated in a statement that has arisen in the work I do that says, "Art was everything to me. Now everything is art." This is the essence of the healing and transformational power that learning about, believing in, and activating a sense that everything can be art that is very real and an asset and resource we should be taking advantage of more than we currently are. Some folks seem to think that if art is everything, that is somehow makes the term art meaningless, but I completely disagree. Once I realized that I could see everything as art, it transferred latent energy, motivation, and just a good old plain understanding of myself and the world into actionable knowledge and behaviors that put me on a track to functioning more optimally in the world in both an everyday sense and also in a bigger vision for my life. Prior to this, I was wanting to make art every day, all day, and that was all I wanted to do, and I thought that to make art was to make a painting or a sculpture. Once I had the revelation that I could be channeling that creative muse, whatever the creative muse actually is, into everyday activities, my quality of the experience of life began to improve significantly. In my own life, I've had the opportunity to express my life art as a library worker at a local public library. What life art looks like for others really could be anything. This just happens to be the way it has gone for me. However, and this is very important, in the fact that life art could be anything, it is extraordinarily important that we ground ourselves as life art and our practices as life artists and come back again and again to that which is edifying, dignifying, peaceful, and from a place of love, in that clearly by saying everything is already art or art potential, we do not condone negative aspects of reality such as hate or misbehavior or other wrong-minded activities done out of ignorance or unconsciousness, or minimize the very real pain and suffering that is experienced as a part of life. This is reverently a transformation or further revealing of what the word art has come to mean in Western culture and the art world. Again, this is the idea that we are in an era of world art where everyone is included. It is with this deep sense of reverence that the term art is applied to, or rather revealed through, all that there is. Just like we would not stop living or condone certain things that are described with the term life, so too we don't condone everything as life art. We simply acknowledge that everything can be art, and then we hone our conduct to fit that which is the highest in all regards. This is important and reemphasizes how we are co-creators of ourselves and even the world at large, as with the term Anthropocene. We play a part in our own creation. The term life art identifies this quality and reminds us to make sure that we are mindfully, consciously, and conscientiously creating ourselves and the world of which we are a part with grace, love, and peacefulness in our hearts. The stakes are quite different, I feel, when someone expresses themselves in the flow of everyday reality rather than in a conventional sense, as with an exhibit, album, or book, and so forth. Just as a purely random example, no one, including Quentin Tarantino, would want to see him channel what he expresses through his movies into actual life, his work being rather violent, typically. We are trying to stop gun violence and other maladies with this work of life art, not exacerbate it. This is why it is critical to make sure that right action, right conduct, and right-mindedness are cultivated on purpose and in a sustainable way as one begins to channel the muse, so to speak, into everyday lived events. I truly feel that more research is necessary into these aspects and is something I am considering taking on in my own life as things go forward. The healing quality that I've experienced from this phenomenon in my life is a testament to the potential for not only personal but public good that is possible through this work. I feel that this is an entire field opening up for us all, and that countless folks will be needed to do more research and study and practice into the nuances of this method and way of being. If things go as the way this vision has appeared to me, I see that life art could become, at the very least, an elective at universities around the world, and hopefully be fleshed out into concentrations offered at countless schools as a new permanent addition to arts education and majors. This could be not only for undergraduate study, but for master's and PhD levels as well. Something like an MLA, Masters in Life Art, could be furthered, and research into the field could be done at the PhD level. In addition to library work, being a life art teacher, healer of self, and coach, this all is another way that I identify with the work and practice it in my life through various offerings like a newsletter, a website, a social network, a blog, a podcast, and conventional work that help to explain this approach and its historical significance. Life art, which I aim to establish more firmly as a term in both the arts and just the world in general, as I have intimated, has appeared a little in the literature that I have surveyed and materials I have combed through, such as with a Fluxus mention, and also an interview with the artist, educator, and director of Praxis Center for Aesthetic Studies, Brainerd Carey, when he was interviewing artist Elizabeth Monroe on his podcast. I had the term come to me organically, just popping into my mind after reading about relational art, and thinking the next iteration of movements would seem well titled as life art, given the developments I have shared here. This is where the art has been coming through me, is living and aspiring to be a part of the art of my times. I have not been focusing in on mediums of a non-living nature that have arisen like artificial intelligence, drones, data, robotics, holograms, and so forth, as many other artists are doing, which I might add is wonderful, but instead focusing in on unpacking a way of thinking and living that alights and delights the nature and lived reality of being as it is experienced in the self. These areas of study, such as artificial intelligence and so on, are important, but I have not been called to study within these spheres in a first-hand manner, but rather inspired to learn about developments in these areas through trade books, articles, and podcasts, while continuing to develop the curriculum for life art studies, which I feel is an important process to keep informed about the times and cultivate a sense of deep personhood that synergizes with the technologies and innovations of our times. Regardless, I still feel that a life art understanding can form the foundation for an approach to such technologies. This is where I would like to list other people who are not all associated typically with art or being an artist, but who have been pivotal to my understanding in all of this, and are people who help to make connections between the understandings that are available in our day and are sometimes indirectly at the intersection of art, spirituality, and science. These people, in addition to some who I have already mentioned, include, but are not limited to, Eckhart Tolle, Andy Puddicombe, Ashley Turner, Oprah Winfrey, Gabby Bernstein, Danielle LaPorte, Susie Frazier, Susanne Adams, Gary Zukov, Deepok Chopra, David Deutsch, Chris Anderson, Yuval Noah Harari, Fred Bidwell, Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, Nato Thompson, and many, many more. The opportunity we have is not to simply represent reality as an object or concept, though that too exists, but to actually be art, to make art our life and our life art. I offer this conception of art as obviously not an egoic achievement of my own, as there have been countless people who have contributed to this understanding, but for the part I have played, it has been as a byproduct of a more selfless union with what I understand to be divine knowledge that I have experienced in the personal and artistic pursuit of peace. And as I hope I have shown here, this similar to perhaps even same notion has been popping up all around the world and in people's lives by many different names. It is this union that I feel the art of our times now speaks through, and will allow us to develop ourselves as works of art to respond to rising contemporary issues like climate change and artificial intelligence, where who we want to be as people will significantly help to constitute the emergent world in which we live and fix more surely the impact we embody. It is worth noting that the notion of art as person could become the foundation, so to speak, of further exploration in art as object and art as concept as a kind of seedbed from which all three registrations can emerge in new and exciting ways. And certainly there are more registrations than that. This has simply been a framework to be conducive to an earnest study. It is my feeling that we can help change the world for the better by recognizing existence itself as an art form. The question then is, will we choose to take this journey? I hope that we will. For more information on my research into life as art or art as life and other work that I do, please visit my website at www.jonkeppel.com. Also, I host a free educational online community for learning called the Life Art Institute, which you can find linked to from my website or through my link tree on my Instagram page, for which my handle is simply @JonKeppel. Come connect with me also on LinkedIn. I really hope that you are feeling the amazing movement that I feel is beginning to happen in our times here with the arts and beyond, and seeing all the wonderful possibilities that we have to learn from all art and all people in a renewed sense of helping to co-create the sacred of our existence in lasting and meaningful ways. Thank you for watching this presentation, and may you find the peace of the universe in art. Take good care. Sending you lots of love and peace.